Wow. So that Hisoka guy looks like he's having a pretty good time at the moment. I wonder what he's doing. Oh. I mean, look, I guess that's one way to smash that subscribe button. So, enjoy, I guess. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. And today it's time to talk about the creepy magician dude / nen genius of Hunter x Hunter, Hisoka, and the potential of his future, specifically regarding events to do with the Dark Continent. And I'd like to get into this because Hisoka is one of the more endlessly speculated on characters in the series, and currently during all the Succession War business, he is shrouded in a great layer of mystery, either saving him for use in the climax of the current arc, or keeping him in reserve to take part in the eventual events of the Dark Continent. And a lot of people will probably state at this point that, well, Hisoka doesn't have a lot of reason to actually travel to this location given his specific goals in life, which as we all know is to gratify himself via the sourcing and combating of strong opponents. In many ways, it's a very similar motivation to that of Isaac Netero, who spent most of his life constantly in search of a worthy adversary, and I only bring that up because there is a direct comparison to be made here, as Netero himself did visit the Dark Continent on 2 occasions. However, after the trip that occurred when he was still in his comparative youth, Netero came to the realization that there was no strong opponent to be found on this hellscape, and that the only victory to be had was that of survival. And I can imagine that Hisoka would find himself in a very similar situation. I mean, there are all sorts of rewards to be gained on the Dark Continent that could revolutionize humanity, or even provide exceptional personal benefit to Hisoka himself, but none of that is really in keeping with the core drive of this mad magician. So immediately, what we need to do to place Hisoka on the Dark Continent is source a strong opponent, because if such a thing were to exist, then all other logic regarding that landmass is out the window. It doesn't matter if he'd be stepping into hell itself, Hisoka would most certainly follow in order to secure an orgasmic fight. And interestingly for him, there are going to be a plethora of powerful figures making their way to the Dark Continent, but more on them in a second, because we do have some immediate business to take care of, which is the viability of Hisoka actually surviving the Succession War, given that his current targets are the entirety of the Phantom Troop, or what remains of them, as well as Illumi Zoldyck. And we do have to call this into question, because this is set up to be potentially the end of Hisoka in the series, because at the moment, his stated driving force is to kill the rest of the spiders, and of course Crawler himself has been the object of Hisoka's brutal lust, much more so than even our protagonist Gon actually. And in this way, an argument can be made that Hisoka and Crawler are involved in a very twisted Romeo and Juliet style scenario, whereby they are destined to fight and potentially kill each other aboard the Black Whale 1. And yes, I know that's not at all how Romeo and Juliet went. This is just one of those scenarios where I didn't fully think that sentence out, but I'm not changing it. But that battlefield could of course be the Dark Continent itself, because one way that this does work out quite well would be if Hisoka managed to kill, the majority of the troop during the Succession War, thus prompting Crawler to follow him onto the arena of the Dark Continent. That is a very long-term game plan though, and it's entirely likely that the Succession War will see the end of the Phantom Troop, and the reason why I say that goes all the way back to the infamous interview with Togashi in Volume 0, where he stated that in the end, Kurapika and the Phantom Troop will all die. Now, various people have had different interpretations of this, some view it as a joke for example, but without any inclination of Togashi's tone, due to it being a written answer, I am inclined to believe that Togashi really meant what he was saying, at least at that time. Because he is known to change his mind from time to time when push comes to shove, and one of those moments would be the cancelled death of Machi, which we might get back to briefly. But just to finish this thought, the troop are effectively confirmed to all end up dead by the end of the series, and that does leave the potential that Hisoka will be the sole survivor of that squabble, due to a combination of taking advantage of the chaos aboard the Black Whale, which is already being stirred by Morena and the other Mafia powers, as well as his newly upgraded post-mortem Nen, which would leave him in a position, without a goal, and needing a new crush to move on to. And really the only situation in which I don't see Hisoka surviving the Succession War is firstly the aforementioned event where Crawler was finally able to kill him, or another figure I briefly brought up being Machi. So of everyone in the Phantom Troop, Machi has by far the closest, I guess we'll call it, a relationship with Hisoka, as he is seen blatantly propositioning her at various points in the series, and for purposes that aren't fights to the death, which is weird. I mean, who knew Hisoka had regular desires from time to time? But Machi was the subject of an interesting piece of decision making from Togashi, as Hisoka was originally supposed to kill her when he came back to life, thanks to post-mortem Nen bungee gum. But Togashi, at the last minute, decided that Machi had a greater purpose in the story, one that he himself wasn't aware of at the time, but he had a hunch. And I would submit that that hunch is almost certainly linked to Hisoka directly, because she is pretty hell-bent on killing him right now. So other than Crawler, I can see a situation in which it is Machi that finally puts an end to our magician. However, should this not occur during the events of the Succession War, or even at all, Hisoka has one of two options. Either he stays with the Kakian Empire, who are all being dumped on the new continent, or he moves on with the rest of the team to the actual Dark Continent. And given that there aren't likely to be any strong targets left within the Karkin Empire, I think that leaves Hisoka with a fairly simple choice, being to follow the strong. And one of the primary motivations I can see for Hisoka landing on the Dark Continent has entirely to do with a certain Jing freaks. Because during the Hunter Chairman election arc, Hisoka made it very clear that he was looking for Jing and that he was a prime target in his mind for a good old-fashioned round of fisticuffs. But that's not it, because during that time Hisoka also named several other Zodiac members, being Kanzai, Ginta, and Pion, who all ranked very highly on his personal scale of desire, with the potential for other members to be added as well. Like, I'd find it very difficult to believe that Hisoka was not at all interested in Botabai, for example, as he is the eldest member of the group and one of the rare triple star hunters that this series has to offer. Another one of which would be the current chairman, Chido Yorkshire, but I can imagine Hisoka not being particularly interested in her. In any case, the entire point of this was to list the possibility of many other targets, and we don't even stop there, because there's also another very exciting, from the perspective of Hisoka, figure who will be attending the Dark Continent party, and that is Beyond Netero. Now, we don't actually have any insight into Hisoka's thoughts regarding Beyond, however we are very well aware of how he felt in regards to Beyond's father Isaac. As during the Hunter exam, Hisoka quite boldly challenged Netero when he was asked who he would and would not prefer to fight in the final round. Of course, Netero casually dismissed this and sent him away, but it goes to show that Hisoka can be quite smitten by the Netero clan, and just imagine his sheer excitement when he learns of the possibility of another Netero, but one even stronger than that of Isaac Netero, as implied with his name Beyond. And to be perfectly honest with you, I can see Hisoka and Beyond on the Dark Continent becoming yet another twisted love story, but it also brings up another intriguing thought, because at the moment it would seem that Beyond is being built up as the ultimate antagonist of this entire expedition. And if Hisoka were to take a keen interest in this man, then that would put him on the other end of that spectrum, which, dare I say it, would be a protagonist. And there is a very good argument to be made that Hisoka is indeed already a protagonist of the series, alongside Gon, Kurapika, Killua, and Leorio, because we do tend to follow his perspective quite a lot during most arcs that he's involved in, bar the Hunter exam, where he was an obvious antagonist. But other than that, he's always been a much more intriguing figure, operating in an independent party of his own. But this is important because in regards to the Dark Continent arc, the one thing we are desperately missing at the moment is a protagonist. And some people's first thoughts in regards to this are going to be, well, what about Kurapika? And for reasons I've already gone into great detail explaining in another video, I do think that Kurapika's story is set to end during the Succession War. Link in the description below if you're keen on checking out those thoughts in more detail. But basically, all of his story threads have been planted into this Karkin Empire business, and he has a multitude of death flags at this point due to the extended use of Emperor time, meaning that he is rapidly losing his natural lifespan with every day he spends aboard the Black Whale 1. And I mean, I explained it much better in the video, but this is more than likely going to leave us with an open slot for a protagonist when we actually get to the Dark Continent, and with that in mind, there really aren't that many options. One choice could be Leorio, I guess, but he is woefully unprepared to be helming the biggest and most dangerous task ever undertaken in this series, and Togashi does seem to enjoy having him relegated to the background, so there is kind of that. The other choice I could potentially think of is to use Jing as our main protagonist during the Dark Continent, because apart from Beyond, he does seem to be the one with the most natural drive to be there in general, plus he's also a freaks, so there's a nice natural connection to go on there. But failing that, I really don't see why we couldn't have a scenario where Hisoka, for the first time in the series, apart from his battle with Chrollo in Heaven's Arena, could be our primary eyes for the arc. Because if nothing else, the Hisoka vs Chrollo fight proved that Hisoka is a captivating figure who we could follow almost exclusively with, maybe a side dish of Jing. But in the end, there it is. Upon further inspection, Hisoka, despite having no interest in the Dark Continent itself, does have a lot of compelling reasons to be present during that eventual arc, and a pretty damn fine chance of actually surviving the events of the Succession War, barring an untimely death from Chrollo, but that didn't work so well last time, even when Chrollo had maximum advantage, but also Togashi's maybe important use of Machi, and that's a big maybe though. In any case, Hisoka continues to be one of the most compelling characters in the entirety of Hunter x Hunter, and he has a lot of potential to sow chaos in what promises to be one of, if not the most insane arc that the series has ever produced. If we ever get there, that is, but of course, that is a whole different discussion. And that pretty much does it for my thoughts on Hisoka's potential in the Dark Continent arc. If you enjoyed this video and the content this channel produces in general, then please do consider donating to the New World Review Patreon, because the support of all of you amazing people is what continues to make this channel possible. And if Patreon isn't quite your style, then please do leave this video a like, share, or subscribe, because it also helps support this channel an incredible amount. And if you'd like to join the fun at any time, then please do head over to my Discord server, where a wide array of shenaniganry takes place on a daily basis. And finally, please do comment with your thoughts on Hisoka and the Dark Continent. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time. put a review of Gintama. All right, that's it's not really a question, but okay. I mean, not okay, because I'm very unlikely to do it actually. Gintama is just such a beast of a series that I have tried to get into on many occasions, and I do quite like it, but I've never really gotten truly hooked by it. The characters are cool and funny enough, but I always end up losing interest early on because comedies can be tricky like that. It also might not help that I always try to start from the beginning of Gintama, and the beginning is, well, the first ton of chapters and episodes are very much a product of its time, and it's very questionable in regards to how well the comedy of those initial stages has aged. I'm sure I'll get into it properly one day, I usually do with these things. I mean, if I eventually got into JoJo, then I'm sure Gintama is only a matter of time. Still, I don't know how much I'll be covering it on this channel, if at all. Sorry.